Hi, welcome to SECON International 2023. My name is John Checo, and this session is on a people-centric approach to breaking the attack chain. I am the former resident CISO for Proofpoint, so let's get started. Today, we're going to be talking about the attack chain, managing the human threat, and reducing the attack surface. So what is the attack chain? The attack chain is an 8-stage, step-by-step process that was developed by Lockheed Martin to identify various aspects of a threat actor in your network. It starts off with reconnaissance, where they're doing social media or open source intelligence searches to find out who they can attack and how they can attack them. Then there's the initial compromise, where they'll send out phishing emails or telephone-oriented attack deliveries, right? TOADs, or maybe some malware-based websites that they get you to click on. Once they do that, they try and develop persistence, basically putting in backdoors or remote access Trojans to make sure they have continued access into the network that they're attacking. Once they're in, they're going to be searching around that network to see what the information they can get. Info gathering, it's called, and to figure out where the crown jewels are, or what they want to, how to get to what they want to get to. Once they figure out where they want to go, they'll start executing some other malware to try and get privilege escalation. And once they get that privilege escalation, they can move laterally across that network, usually undetected, and either exfiltrate that information, put in ransomware, or do some other impactful operations. From a people perspective, the entire idea of reconnaissance and initial compromise really talks about attacking people. Once they develop that compromise, they want to develop persistence. And the way they'll do that is they'll look for local admin accounts or shadow admin accounts, maybe some service accounts, or some legacy apps. They try and find any which way they can to try and develop persistence and be able to escalate the privileges and do some lateral movement. Once they get the access that they need, then they're going to be starting to pull out data. So what is that human threat? Well, let's talk about those three types of users we see inside your business. One is the careless user, and they make up about 50%, 58% of all insider-related incidents. So that might be through misconfiguration, emailing data files to the wrong email address, inadvertently, sharing data, or bringing data home because they want to work at it at home, so they put it on their Gmail account or local file share. So again, they're well-intentioned, but they just don't understand security well enough or data protection well enough to take the proper precautions. The next most frequent is the malicious user. It's 25% of all insider-related incidents. It's basically people who have an intent to resign, disgruntled employees, or folks that might be hired by the company that have ulterior motives. We try and monitor with things like anomalous behavioral detection. And finally, it's the compromised user, the people who have taken over a valid credential. We've seen this with the MFA takeovers of people who have two-factor authentication, but they have a man-in-the-middle attack. And this takes up about 17% of all insider-related incidents. Even though it's not an insider, they are using valid credentials of a workforce employee. So if we go back to that attack chain and look at the 8 stages, we have 3 different strategies we can use to break this chain. One is threat prevention, right? And that's at the very beginning of the cycle. That's through technology, firewalls, through cybersecurity education, through phishing detection. But if they do get through, then we look inside our networks and we look at anomalous behavior or navigation through our networks. And that's called access detection and response. And we're looking for people who are, or identities or credentials that are doing things that are not normal to their business. Again, if the threat actor gets through that and they actually get to the data that they want to get and start trying to pull it out, we have information protection tactics, such as encrypting the data, making sure it doesn't cross borders, and making sure it doesn't go out to the public network. So there's a lot of different areas we can look at for breaking this attack chain. I'll take a sidebar here and I'll talk about some of the insider threats that we saw over the years. One I like to talk about is, front running as an SDLC. And what I like about this is that it wasn't a technology-based solution to this. we were looking at pre-trade compliance software to be used as for our traders, and that was a limited license, I believe, of 2,000 licenses. But in talking with legal, I asked about the developers, because the developers were actually developing against production copies of the data. Can we do something to protect the front running from the developers? And so we put some tracer data or fake data in the production data, and saw that, yes, indeed, we saw some development managers trying to trade on that fake data. So that being said, we had two options. One was to change all the data that the developers used to test data or fake data. And that was just a big undertaking. So we decided that the non-technical approach was to include the developers and development teams. Anybody who had access to production data would have to register with pre-trade compliance. They weren't classified as a financial services registered employee. That was a great non-technical solution. It was very cost effective, and it basically allowed us to mitigate that issue. So let's talk about reducing that attack surface. In that particular case, we reduced the attack surface by basically using a non-technical aspect. But we're in cybersecurity, and we try and look at the different technologies and tools that are out there that can help us. Not everything is going to be an easy solution that we saw before. In our surveys, these were the top 6 tools that security groups like to use to manage their insider threats. I would like to point out the Security Information and Event Management Systems, the SIEM systems, because to me, that is the hinge pin to all the other 5, to bring all that data in and correlate it and build a holistic picture of what's happening in your network. Each one of these are very important, don't get me wrong, but they are very specific point solutions, and you may not catch a more systemic issue when they're not triggering, or that data is not being viewed from a holistic point of view. A good example there is we have lots of rules today, from cloud shares, network shares, copying data to personal storage. These are all rules that we have today. And a lot of times these rules are noisy, right? So we have preventions in place. And so we ignore them from a trigger perspective because we are preventing them. But if we classify them all together and then we start aggregating them, we can see a high volume or frequency of individual violations, which may be indicative of an insider incident. And we found that actually, if we do take these smaller incidents or smaller triggers and not ignore them, but put them in a different classification, we see that we do find those insider threats very easily, because if you think about it, a user may try and do one aspect, copy data to their personal share, and then maybe that fails, so they try and copy to USB, and that fails, and they try and zip it up and change the file extension on it, and that fails. So again, they may be just triggering each one of these violations just once, but together they're actually creating a good background of what an insider threat is. I'd also like to talk about things that you use today and how you can actually amplify them. One, we all have endpoint DLP, and one of the things I like to add to endpoint DLP is start monitoring when you're starting to send files to printers, right? And what printers are they being sent to? That kind of gives us an idea of, are they being sent to corporate printers? Are they being sent to non-normal printers, printers that are maybe in a different office where nobody's going to watch what they're picking up? Then you get into the information protection areas, and I like to kind of point out here about using APIs. A lot of our software today are really mashups of APIs with a nice user interface. But what we have to look at is, are those APIs all authorized? Do we have access? Is there data that's being transmitted over those APIs that we need to monitor? We all have CASB. We're all using SaaS systems and cloud-based systems these days. And one of the things I like to talk about in CASB is your out-of-band chats. One of the firms I worked for, we had 8 approved chat platforms, but when we surveyed the company employees, we found out that there were over 30. And that means that they were using a lot of unapproved chat platforms because ease of use, or maybe that's what the clients use. But we have to start monitoring those or tombstoning those to make sure that they don't share private information. I'm a big fan of browser isolation. Not only can browser isolation prevent you from your employees from looking at malicious sites or going out to sites that we don't want them to, like gambling or pornography. I like to use browser isolation internally to prevent our system admins from gathering data from the server. Again, with the insider threat, someone who has root access to a server can access almost anything on that server, including the data. So what we did was, in one firm, we actually took browser isolation and made all access to the servers through browser isolation. So someone can update and patch a server, but they couldn't actually download data from that server. Email security is table stakes. I'm not going to really go into that, but if you don't have email security, you're really behind the curve. These things together are really what I call layered defenses. And each one of these, even though they have their specific challenges and advantages, together they actually built a really good security program. One of the things I also like to talk about is using your existing tools together. The example I like to point out is I did an insider threat investigation, found the insider threat, but we didn't realize how systemic the issue was until we used the archive and our e-discovery look back to find that more than just one employee was being poached by a competitor. With ITM, we actually saw that that insider threat leave to go to the competitor, but we found other employees that were being poached. And without that e-discovery look back through archive, we would have never found that. So start using your tools together. Start building, again, trying to be a detective, try and build a story around what you can use. And I think, again, this is what we think about as synergies or combined capabilities. So let's go back to the attack chain and the human threat. If we actually look back at all the different things that we're doing and we give a little more organization to it, we can actually apply the NIST cybersecurity framework to this, and it fits very nicely into that those 8 stages, right? The 5 areas of the NIST CSF is identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And if you notice, the identify and protect work well against recon and persistence. Detect and respond are looking at the info gathering all the way to lateral movement. And the recover is basically figuring out how to staging and impact, how to mitigate those issues there. So I'd like to take this even one step further and talk about the cybersecurity defense matrix, which was developed by Sunil Yu at Bank of America. It basically takes the 5 pillars of the NIST CSF and applies asset classes to it, and also the degree of dependency of people, processes, and technology. What's really great about this is that now you can map your existing tools or your existing security program to it, and you can find out exactly where you have coverage and where you don't have coverage. In fact, if we start applying resources to this and budgeting to this, we can find out in our budgets, are we overspending on protect and detect? Are we underspending on user respond and recover or application respond and recover? Are we overspending on devices, on device technologies, and not spending enough on data technologies? These are the things that we can start looking at when we start using the cyber defense matrix. And again, looking at that whole attack chain and where we're breaking the attack chain. So bottom line up front, we need to converge event data, and that's how we get the best bang for our buck. Don't worry. I mean, data centric is important, but we have to augment that data centric with a people centric that correlates the threats and the user behaviors that go along with moving data from place to place. We have to go beyond just having the best of breed products and start unifying them, taking the data and developing, using a SIEM system to develop narratives about what's happening in your organization. And we have to stop relying on heavyweight on-premise architectures and start embracing the cloud native architectures and building in tools and processes that combine the on-premise activities with the cloud activities. If we know that we have 2 Active Directory instances, one for cloud and one for on-premise, we have to start correlating them and start having a better idea of what's going on. So that's all I have for today. If you want to contact me, you can use the email above or contact me through LinkedIn, and brownie points if you understand what that LinkedIn address means. So thank you very much, and have a great day.